Hi, I'm Rich Edwards, and today we are in a location that's a little bit of a mix of urban and off-road to check out a vehicle that is a mix of urban and off-road. Let's look at the Toyota Prado Adventure. So what is the Toyota Prado Adventure? Well, it's a model that's almost at the top of the range. Only the VX Limited sits above it at $103,990. That adds a few niceties for those who are wanting to go off-road in the Prado, which will be a lot of owners. Now, you can start the Prado range in the mid $80,000 bracket or reach just a couple of grand more to that VX. But I think this is a little bit of a sweet spot, even if that's saying a family car for just over $100,000. Interesting to cue that as a sweet spot. But anyway, let's have a bit of a look around. Now, this one here is in black. You can pay a little bit more and get a 2-ton paint color, but in black, it looks pretty good, pretty tough. Now, if we come on in, there's very much heritage styling to the new Land Cruiser. This is designed to kind of evoke the look of the older Land Cruisers. You've got this lack of a Toyota badge, just Toyota written along the front there. This very kind of pushed down aggressive grille. These thin headlights, they cue back to the Land Cruisers of the 1980s. Big air dam in here as well. You've got some cameras around the place for 360-degree cameras. Big bonnet here, housing underneath there a 2.8 litre 4-cylinder diesel. It's a hybrid. We'll talk about that later on. Around the side, big pushed out arches, black cladding down here, which I guess is a little bit to make it look aggressive off-road, but maybe even as practical, you know, to brush past things without damaging your paintwork. We have big 18-inch wheels here on Geolander tyres. I kind of feel like for a off-road spec model, this potentially could have had some slightly more aggressive tyres in it. I've been in the Ford Everest Tremor the last week that has some really chunky 80 tyres in it. Would have been cool to see that here as well. Big mirrors here, again, more cameras and big side steps. And they're solid, big stonking, easy to use. Now, if you're really going to set this up for off-road, you might look at taking those off and putting some bar work there. But just a note there, we have roof rails for attaching all your roof boxes, accessories, something to clip your skis onto, that kind of thing. Normal door handles. I've been driving electric cars lately. They generally have those pull-out door handles. I far prefer that. And yeah, tinted windows as standard on the Adventure. Let's go and have a look around the back. Now, round at the rear of the vehicle, we have a tow bar, 3.5 tons of towing, and then we have the back door. Now, if you push this button here, you can access the back by dropping things over the side and in there. Now, one thing I will say is I'm 6 foot tall, and I've found that's quite a reach to actually get in and get stuff in and out of there, but still a nice feature to have. If we close that down, we can push the button here to open the rear door. It is electric, which is handy. But then when you get inside, it does get a little bit disappointing. We do have this big box here, a little bit of storage in the back there, but otherwise that is there because of the hybrid battery. But it's also one of the reasons why a lot of these Prados are being actually bought as 5-seaters rather than 7-seaters. The old model was generally sold as 7-seater. You can get a 7-seater, but because of the hybrid battery, it's really reduced the amount of boot space available. Even in this one, you've only got 441 litres in this 5-seater vehicle. You get a lot more, of course, when you fold the seats, but it is somewhat of a compromise. We'll talk more about that compromise later. But otherwise, it's a nicely finished load area. You have, you know, your big pull-out thing. Weirdly, you've still got cup holders, even though there's no back seats in this one. You have 220-volt AC power, and you've got a subwoofer sitting in the rear door there. So a reasonable boot space, but just imagine if it didn't have this box here underneath, how much more storage you'd have. Let's go look at the rest of the interior. Right, so jumping in the front of the Land Cruiser Prado. It's an easy step in for me, but for shorter people, those steps are there. Now, these front seats are heated, electric, super comfortable. They've got memory functions there, which is great if your wife is about a foot shorter than you, as mine almost is. And again, we've got retro touch in here. We've got the Twitter across the steering wheel. This is a really nice, chunky, almost hint of retro looking stereo, even though there are a lot of buttons there. So powering it on. We have a big digital dashboard in front of the driver, another big screen up here. So lots of touchscreens, but still buttons for everything, which I love. So, you know, look, nice adjusters there. You've got buttons for everything from the heated seats, the ventilated seats, all the climate control. It's dual zone. Down here, you've got an audio dial. You don't need to use the steering wheel for that. Button for the 360-degree camera and the idle up, handy for those who are off-road. And then we have a lot of USB ports. We have 2 USB-C charging ports, a USB-C data port, got an HDMI port. You can put videos up on that screen, take your PlayStation off-road with you. We have a wireless charger here. So we have a mode select dial here, drive mode. We have the terrain system controls down here, a crawl mode. And then over here, we can lock the center diff, lock the rear diff. We can disconnect the front stabilizer, and we have our traction control system there. Over here, a switch for high 4 or 4 low, separate transfer case. We'll discuss that more later. And tucked away in here, we have a button to turn off the start-stop system and a towing mode, as well as the start button. Over here, even more buttons for the automatic headlights, all those sorts of things. On the steering, we've got controls for this screen here, plus the driver assistance functions. I won't go too far into them, but Toyota has one of the better kind of standard suites of driver assistance features. It's called Toyota Safety Sense. So adaptive cruise control, lane keeping, lane tracing, blind spot detection, all those things. They aren't claiming to be self-driving or anything like that, but they all just work really well. Now, a few other touches to note. We have a JBL sound system. It's quite thumpy and good. Big grab handles and lots of soft touch materials all around the place. Though we'll notice this dashboard up here, a little bit scratchy. Does look a little bit cheap in the context of the rest of the vehicle. In the center console, if you're going a long way off-road, you've got a cool box to keep your drinks chilly. Let's jump in the back. Okay, jumping in the back of the Prado. Let's see how I fit. The seat is set for me, and it is a little bit tight. There's a nice lean back on the seat. That is quite comfortable. We do have a nice big armrest here, but there's a bit foot space underneath the front seat in my mode, which admittedly is low, is a smidge tight, and the ceiling feels quite tight, and that's because of the sunroof in the front. Now we do have down here controls for the ventilation system, 2 more USB-C power ports, a 12-volt power port. Now, one thing I will note is because of the four-wheel drive system being tucked up into the vehicle, you do have a very, very big transmission tunnel here, which means that poor Steve stuck in the center is going to have really a lack of leg space. Although they've put kind of plastic covering over it too, because that just eats more into the space. We do have ISOFIX points here, nicely hidden away under these Velcro, and we do have pockets in the back of the seats. So not bad. It's pretty comfortable, but for your bigger friends, and look, I am 130th percentile or whatever it is, I'm a big lad. It's okay, but not quite as good as, say, a Land Cruiser 300, obviously. Anyway, let's take it for a drive. Right, so what is it like driving the new Toyota Prado Adventure? Well, it's a really interesting mix. You know, this has relations to commercial vehicles, not through the Hilux, but certainly the Tacoma that sells in the American market. A little bit of Hilux in there, it's sort of a bit of a mix, you know. But for something that's based on commercial vehicle platforms, it's actually not bad. It does feel reasonably car-like to drive. The ride is firm but comfortable, not too spongy. They've got a really good mix from that. Comfortable enough for family use, definitely. And power is plentiful. 150 kilowatts and 500 newton meters of torque. Makes for a really brisk vehicle around town and on the open road. I've been more than happy about how this thing gets around. But there is a hook to the power in that this thing is noisy, as you're potentially hearing there. This engine, just breathe on the throttle, and it's pretty raucous. I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind that. It certainly gets better when it's warmed up, but it does feel like an old school diesel commercial in a noise perspective, and even vibration. I can feel the vibrations through my foot, a little bit through the steering wheel. So you don't forget in this vehicle that you are driving a truck, you know, a solidly built work vehicle. Some people may get a little bit annoyed with that noise. And I certainly got a little bit concerned initially, but I'm now really used to it. And I think it's just part and parcel of this. You know, this is a hybrid, but the fundamental engine underneath is based on some pretty old tech in the scheme of things. They've done a great job of bringing it up to date with that hybrid drivetrain. It is a little bit agricultural. Now, while we're talking about power, let's talk about this hybrid system. Now, it is not a traditional Toyota hybrid system. In fact, a long way from it. It really is a lower voltage, 48 volt assist system. So it uses a motor generator to assist the engine where needed. You've got that 48 volt battery in the back. It does help emissions and fuel economy a little bit. This thing rates in the mid 8s from the factory, but you're looking closer to say 9.5 litres per 100 kilometres on the road. Some would argue for the fact you lose that space in the boot, that a non-hybrid version would be a little bit more appealing, and it probably would be. But in this day and age, with the clean car standard, they've got to figure out some way to keep that CO2 down, and these are the kind of vehicles you're going to get from it. One thing I do love about this car is the just presence. It does have a really upright, lovely, flat-fronted windscreen feel to it, a little bit Jeep Wrangler. Reminds me a lot of the FJ Cruiser. In fact, I think this is, to me, feels more of a successor to the FJ Cruiser than it does to the old Toyota Prado. Now, out in the open road, the steering is good. It's, fairly direct, works pretty well. Body roll is actually pretty well controlled. Look, if you're looking at this as comparison to other family SUVs of the size, let's look at a Toyota Highlander perhaps. This does lack the ride comfort and potentially even handling of those models. But you know what? It's not that bad of a compromise for what you do get in the off-road stakes. So you do have a few other tricky things in the suspension, the drivetrain for full driving, other than that low range transfer case. You've got a detachable front sway bar that allows for more wheel articulation, a center locking differential, which is great for making sure that if the wheels in the front are slipping, that the wheels in the back keep moving, keep driving the ground, and you've got a limited slip rear diff. Now, these things are fantastic off-road. Now, the Prado's always had a good reputation for being impressive off-road, but this particular new model seems to be doing exceptionally well. I'm going to put a link in a corner here to a video on a totally different channel where they went through the Simpson Desert in Australia and they got hit by storms. And the one vehicle that did not break, and in fact, at times was pushing other really extensively built off-road rigs, was a near factory Toyota Prado of this generation. So if you wanted to go off-road, in the past you would have said buy a 79 series, buy a 300. I'm starting to wonder if this thing here could be the off-road weapon that people turn to. So the Toyota Prado Adventure, I think this thing is pretty darn cool. It looks great, I think, has those great retro looks inside and out, drives reasonably well on the road, and is still pretty practical. Now, it's not perfect. That motor is a little bit loud, and that boot with that hybrid battery, just a little bit too constrained. But look, I think you can let that go because this thing's going to be great for weekends, great for getting off-road, or even just great for looking really good around town. It is at the pricier end. I think you could probably get a little bit more in a Ford Everest, but Toyota reliability, Toyota resale, it is really appealing. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to do us a favor and like and subscribe down below and ring that bell, and we'll have more great vehicle reviews for you coming soon.